Welcome to the Beau Show, the home of faith, family, and freedom. So much of our current culture is focused on children, how to raise them, how to entertain them, how to educate them, and what kind of values we impart to them. We might not be able to rely on basic textbooks anymore because the interpretation of the teacher may be far more influential. I spoke to Connor Boyack, author of the Tuttle Twins books, which tackle fundamental American ideas in a fun way. The books were adapted into a crowd-funded TV show by demand. So I also spoke with the writer and director of the Tuttle Twins series, Jonny Vance, about how they introduce basic ideas about freedom and responsibility. I hope you enjoy. Connor Boyack, thank you so much for joining me here on the Beau Show. Tuttle Twins Season 2, man, I think it's such a great thing what you're doing. And I'm curious, first of all, what drove you to write these books?
So this started with our first book in 2014. And the year prior to that, I had been wanting to teach my kids about the ideas of private property rights, free markets, entrepreneurship. They were young. They were 5 and 3. And I literally went on Amazon looking for books that would help me introduce these ideas in a simple fashion to kids. There was nothing. And I was talking with a buddy of mine who's now our illustrator, Elijah. He had, younger kids. And so we kind of bounced around this idea for a while. Should we do this? Would it work? The first book was really just a labor of love. We had no idea if it would catch on, but we wanted it for our children. And so we did it, and then enough people bought it, read it, and were like, hey, when's the next one coming out? So it soon enough turned into a series. Now we've got over 24 books for a variety of ages, 5 million copies sold, and it just continues to grow.
So you said this was around 2014. I'm curious if you couldn't find anything on Amazon, at what point did you see kids' educational materials become more indoctrination than education, let's say?
Well, I've always kind of believed there's this element to indoctrination, but it was often more subtle in the earlier years. Most parents weren't really clued into it. I mean, 2020 is what changed everything. It's when all the Zoom schooling happened. So now parents were literally seeing what their kids were, being taught. It's when I would say, the post-Trump era, we saw the left get a lot more into, I think, more intentional indoctrination, and Trump kind of broke everyone's brains, and everyone started trying to reclaim the future by propagandizing the young. So I would say that was like a first little jump, was kind of during the Trump presidency. But 2020 was a massive a game changer. I mean, homeschooling tripled across the country. Our book sales surged. Every metric you look at, parents really woke up and realized, hey, maybe I need to make a different choice. So for us, it was a bit of when preparation meets opportunity, because we had been doing this for a few years. And then when the opportunity struck, especially in 2020, we were there to kind of wave our hands and say, hey, families, we're here to help you. And so a lot of them came our way.
So 2020 happens, then it's this watershed moment. Is that when you decided that this would make a great transition from book to television?
We had been toying with the idea for maybe a couple years prior to that. Elijah and I wanted to do a cartoon. We liked the idea. But we couldn't figure out how to make it work. We even had Elijah animate a brief 30-second clip just so we could use that and show potential donors, because everything we do with our books is through a nonprofit. And so we were trying to shop it around and trying to get donors on board. Didn't really succeed. At the same time, The Chosen was raising a ton of money. The very popular TV show about Jesus and Angel Studios was building itself. And I know all the folks involved with Angel Studios. Their kids read the Tuttle Twins books. We've worked together on past projects over the years. So it was kind of an overlapping conversation, whereas they were seeing that success, and then they were looking around saying, what's our next show going to be? What's our next, project going to be? They came to us and were like, hey, have you thought about a cartoon? And we're like, sure enough, So it was kind of good timing where we came together and were able to make it work.
And everybody knows that the Angel platform has been so successful, not just for you, but for many other shows, The Chosen being just one of them. Connor, I'm curious, with this backdrop of the trend of drag queens reading to kids in a public classroom, do you ever think it's possible at some point that someone will read the Tuttle Twins to kids in a public classroom?
Oh boy, we've had people try to force this question on libraries that host drag queen story hour. One of them, I think, was in New Jersey most recently. And they emailed the librarian after they had done a drag queen story hour. They had publicized it. That librarian had publicly praised the event, saying how wonderful it was. And so these individuals then contacted the librarian and said, oh, hey, we would like to do a Liberty story hour, and we'll have someone come and read the Tuttle Twins books. And the library declined, saying that they didn't think that their community would be interested in that, so they didn't want to add it to their programming. So that is not an anomaly. Others who have made attempts have run into similar problems. For us, we do try to get into the schools. We do try to get into the libraries, but it's just such an uphill battle, and it's so bureaucratic. 99% of our sales and our focus is on the family. We want mom and dad reading together with their kids, because the problem. Kids, if they learn something in school, they come home, mom says, hey, honey, what did you learn today? I don't know. And there's a shrug, and then they move on. And there's no connection or cohesion where mom or dad or siblings can kind of react to that knowledge, support them, build upon it. And so for us, these are more family educational materials. We're really trying, my ultimate contention is that our country is not going to be saved at the Capitol. It's not going to be saved in the courtroom. I think our country is saved, if it's going to be saved, around the dinner table. And we have to get parents and kids talking about real ideas, current events, what's going on in the world. We have to let our children and model for them behavior of what it means to be critical thinkers, skeptical of those in power, entrepreneurial. And so really what we're after with the Tuttle Twins, both with the books and with the cartoon, is getting into the home and supporting both parents and kids coming together and having elevated, meaningful conversations about ideas that matter.
Jonny Vance, thank you so much for joining me on the Beau Show today. You are the writer and director of Tuttle Twins, and it's now in its second season, which just premiered recently. Tell me how you came to be a part of this great series.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Beau. To start, about 4 years ago, I became a dad, and I think I really became sensitive to what's being taught in our culture, what's being taught on TV shows, what's being taught in school. And I really wanted to kind of look for an antidote for my kids. How do I set them up for success? How do I set them up to not have anti-freedom and anti-American values just shoved down their throat? I was a big fan of the Tuttle Twins books by Connor Boyack. And I was also looking to make a career change to get into original content. And so, I helped come up with this concept of the Tuttle Twins and this kind of grandma with a time-traveling wheelchair and how we could kind of incorporate humor and fun into learning. And so that's kind of how it all came to be.
Well, something that I think is really unique about you, Jonny, is that you were the writer behind some very viral Harmon Brothers ads. And people have seen millions and millions, if not hundreds of millions of people have seen these. So Squatty Potty, which, by the way, I wish I had been in. I really wish I had been in that one. And Lumi deodorant. So was it a natural transition for you to go from witty ads into a kids animated series?
Actually, it was. When we did the ad for Lumi, we had to break down the science and this education of why our body odor exists and how to treat it scientifically and make it funny and make it watchable. So that's kind of you can be boring and scientific, but it's really kind of hard to be exciting and hilarious and scientific. And so that actually has come in handy a lot with some of these concepts we teach at Tuttle Twins, like breaking down inflation. The inflation monster episode is actually our #1 episode. It's our most popular episode.
Really?
And it's about inflation. Yeah, kids are talking to their parents at Costco about inflation. So I think it's been a fun challenge, but definitely there's so much crossover to what we were doing before.
Well, and probably because in an ad, you only have, 30 seconds or even a minute to get your point across and to convey that theme. And I think it's so tremendous that you and Connor have been able to get these real world concepts into kids' heads. Like you said, I mean, the fact that an inflation episode, most people don't even have no idea what inflation is. So it's great that it's being taught at such a young age. Well, in writing and directing an animated series that Connor Boyack had previously written about in books, how difficult was it for you to adapt those books into an animated series? I know someone was telling me that the grandmother, for instance, is Cuban now. And it sounds like that maybe had a specific purpose. So talk to me about that adaptation.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Connor has just laid out such a great framework for these principles. And so the books have been so key in that. But the show departs from the books in the way that we needed something that would play well for kids. We wanted to compete with Paw Patrol or, whatever they're watching on Disney Plus. We wanted it to be exciting and funny. And so we have infused a lot more imagination and fun into the world. And so although it's based on the books, and Connor Boyack is an executive producer on the show, the story is very different. But in terms of the Cuban grandma, so we wanted to really hit home this idea of the effects of socialism and communism for kids. And what better way than to have one of the characters be from a communist country and escape to America and see that stark contrast between freedom and not having freedom. And so that was built into her backstory. And so that's kind of the origin of that.
I mean, to that point, Jonny, I've seen that firsthand. I'm here in the Miami area, and nothing is more prevalent here than Cuban people who've come and escaped oppression from communist Cuba and living their American dream here. I've interviewed a number of those people, and they come from Colombia, Venezuela. Sadly, as we know, most of South America is socialist now. There's very few left that aren't. So I think that was a smart choice. Some people might look at it and say, oh, it's just a diversity move. You just did it because you needed a diverse character. But you had a point to it, which is a grandmother coming from a communist country to be able to talk about it firsthand, right?
Yes, that's exactly right. And, the kids are a quarter Cuban. And, the family is, we wanted to show America's a melting pot.
Yeah.
And
it's not a bad thing at all.
Even that, I think, is frowned upon today, where, America should be, it's bizarre.
Keep watching at epochtv.com/The Beau Show.